So let's talk about this 2008 Nissan Titan and why we have this mess. Some of you guys already probably know what's going on here. This is going to be a video about this gauge cluster. So I purchased this vehicle, and when I purchased it, it had a brand new fuel pump with it. I kind of thought that was suspicious right out of the gate, but you know, the truck ran great. I knew whatever was going on, it couldn't be anything major. So fast forward, I'm driving the vehicle home, and as I'm driving down the road, it just kind of shuts off on me. Still had a quarter tank on the gauge. So I'm kind of, feeling it out, trying to figure out what the issue is, and I can hear the fuel pump really loud. Like, well, it doesn't sound like it's picking up any fuel. So we go and get some fuel, put it in it, sure enough, fires right up. Like, hey, that's why he had it. He had it because the gauge was off. So that level sensor is probably bad. I went ahead and put the fuel pump assembly in that came with the truck, and it didn't fix anything. So I started looking into other issues that could potentially cause it, and found out that there was a recall on these trucks and that level sensor was a fail point. So by deductive reasoning, I kind of assumed that, maybe with him buying this offline, that fuel pump was a pre-update fuel pump. So I went ahead and ordered a factory fuel pump from Nissan. I installed that factory pump. Same thing, gauge cluster was still off. Well, I dug into it a little bit further, and what I found was that there was also a problem with the ignition with the clusters. So with the cluster problem, the biggest issue was the fuel gauge. And the fuel gauge would say it was at a quarter, it was empty. Exactly the problem I'm having. Even though, commonly I would know that to be a level sensor, that ended up not being true with this one. So I pull the cluster out, and I go to the junkyard to get a test cluster, install that cluster, and the cluster that I install, the gauge was correct on. I was like, great, we found the problem. So now we have another problem. The mileage for this vehicle is stored internally in the cluster. That posed an issue because the cluster that I picked up from the junkyard had 255,000 miles in it, when this vehicle actually had 156,000 miles. That was going to seriously affect the value of it. So I started looking for ways to resolve that. One of the first attempts that I made on solving this problem was taking the cluster apart, and I was going to remove the LCD screen from this guy right here, and install it into the new cluster. So as you can see, I cracked that LCD screen. It's not a super simple thing to switch over, and while I was applying a little bit of pressure to the bottom side, it caused that screen to bust. So that took that option off the table. So then I started looking for other options. I tried to hook up my different scanners to it to see if there was any way I could go in and affect the mileage on the vehicle, and there was nothing I could do. I contacted the dealer. The dealer said, no, it's 100% impossible. You can't do it. So I started doing some online research, and I found this company called Upfix that claimed that they could do mileage corrections. I was very skeptical of this company because whenever I went in to actually set it up for the mileage correction, they didn't ask me if I was a shop. They didn't even ask me for so much as a picture of the ignition cluster. They had a disclaimer that said, we can get that mileage back within 300 miles of whatever your requested mileage is. And, of course, in the disclaimer, it also said it's illegal to change mileage, that kind of thing. But, hey, here they are doing it and not asking for any proof. So I took a risk. I sent it to them. It was $150 for the mileage correction. I paid an extra $39.99 for a rush. The rush was kind of a waste of money because it still ended up taking me close to a month to get the cluster back. But when I got the cluster back today and I hooked it up in the truck, the mileage was within 20 miles of where the mileage was originally. And I'm super pleased, and I'm glad that I've found a fix for this. And I hope that this will help somebody else in the Nissan community. This is an issue on not just the Titans, but also affects the Armadas. And I'm sure there's probably another model or two in there, but those are the two that I know for a fact are affected by this problem. So, this used correctly could be a good thing. Used incorrectly could be a bad thing. I hope you'll do the right thing with it. I'm going to use it the right way. It's a new tool that I have in my belt, and I'm glad to be able to say that I know I can do it, and I hope this works and helps somebody else out.